If you're pretty and you baby mama, turn up. If you're pretty and you're sexy, let me see you turn up. You the mothers of the world, I call it mixed universe.
Hi, welcome to Everything Motherhood, where we talk about everything motherhood. For those who are listening to us on the radio basket, thank you for listening. We don't take it for granted. And for those who are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe. And we thank you so much for watching us and for listening to us. Now, last week, we had a guest who was speaking to us about infertility, Jackie DeWay. She's trying to break the stigma with married women who are having fertility issues. And if you haven't listened to that, please listen to it. This week, we have with us the Honorable Winnie Masiko. She is quite the illustrious woman. She's a woman activist. She started her career as a teacher. She then progressed into different fields, as well as being a member of parliament. She's done 2 different masters, one in public health, the other she'll remind me what it was in, but she has managed to move so many mountains for the woman and the gender, our gender. You've done so much. You've been the chairperson of Uganda Women's Parliamentary Association, and she is currently the National Program Coordinator for Uganda Women Entrepreneurs Program under Ministry of Gender. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here with us today.
Yes, what was your second master's in? I apologize, I've temporarily forgotten.
It was in social sector planning and management.
Yes, that's
from
it.
Makerere University.
That is it. Welcome so much. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Now, I forgot to mention that you are married with 5 children.
Yes, I am.
Yes, when did you become a mother?
Well, way back in 1983. That's when I got married. And my first child was born in 1985. Yes, so I've been a mother then. Now I'm a grandmother of 6 children.
Wow. And maybe you can tell us about your first experience in motherhood. Was it what you thought it would be? Was it different? Did you give birth in a hospital? What was it like in the 80s? Help us paint that picture.
Yes, I gave birth in 1985, as I've already told you, and got married in 1983 soon after university. So I was quite a young girl of 23 years old, and I got married. My husband was working in a hospital, in a rural setup, Kisses Hospital, which was very rural those days. And even now, it's in Rukunjiri district in southwestern Uganda. So being a mother at that time was quite challenging because, first of all, I was young and I was going to live in a rural area. But the present bit of it is that my husband was working in a hospital, so I delivered in the hospital. That's where I started. I had all my children in Kisses Hospital, which was quite a privilege at that time. My pregnancies were easy. I can't complain, but it was at delivery time when to present it as a big challenge because, for instance, my first child, I had to be induced. I came to term, but I couldn't get any contractions. And they had to induce me, even the second born. But then the others came easy. So it was quite a challenge in a sense that everything was new, but it was a blessing as well because we're living in a rural community and there was support from relatives, from friends, from the hospital staff. So I was helped to raise up children in that communal setup. So the motherhood at that period was full of support on my part.
Were you working at that time, or were you a stay-at-home mother? What were you doing?
I was actually working because I was teaching in a nearby school, but it was just a kilometer from where I was living, and I was teaching a few days a week. So most of the time I was at home with my children, and I had support of people who would support me at home. So I could work and still look after my children. But one of the things that I must emphasize is that I had support of my husband, who was helping me to sometimes manage looking after those children at that early age.
In the 80s, you had support from your husband. That's quite impressive, because there's this stigma attached to African men and not wanting to have anything to do with their children. They say, come take your child. So
yes. Yes, on my part was different because my husband had a Christian background, and we had lived in an area where in that hospital there were missionaries that had started it. So it was very easy to see what even other white people were doing and how they were looking after their families. So I think it became easy for us to work in that way.
And you were telling me when you became a member of parliament was after you just had your last born. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that story.
Yes, as you already said, I was a teacher for some time. Then I was asked to come to the Constituent Assembly. So when I joined the Constituent Assembly, I had just finished giving birth. I had my last born baby, so a baby girl, because others were boys. So I had to come with my child to Kampala and live with her. The rest stayed back with their father, but I came with my baby because she was still breastfeeding. So I came with her, and I was forced to rent just near at that time we were having the Constituent Assembly discussions were taking place in the present Serena Hotel. There was conference center at that time. And I had to make sure I got a place near around Udiam House, where I rented for some time, so that I was able to breastfeed my baby, because I would go to work, and over break time I come and breastfeed, walk back over lunch hour, I come and breastfeed. So it was quite interesting, but I had a help who would look after my baby when I was working. So I had to come with my child to Kampala.
Wow. So were you staying at this place close to the conference center, or it was just a place for during the day and then you would in the evening retire somewhere else?
No, I had to rent a place there. I was staying there.
Okay.
And I had to look for it because it was in close proximity to where we were working from.
Must have been quite expensive.
Very expensive indeed.
Wow. And I know when you were in parliament, you did so much for us women. And as myself, I would like to thank you for helping to move the woman's agenda. But maybe you can tell us more about your time in parliament and what you did for some of what you did for us as women, and more specifically the mothers.
Yes, I must say that I have a big passion for women's equality and empowerment. And I started that long ago when I was even a young girl. I always wanted to see women come forth and work and perform and be measured against their levels of performance. So right from school days, I was an activist. I was always very, very much involved in women's activities. So when I came to Parliament, I chaired the UWEP, that is Uganda Women Parliamentary Association. I got that opportunity because I was heavily involved in that. I was elected to chair that caucus, that group. And during that time, we worked very hard. We made sure that most of those pieces of legislation that had gathered dust in so many shelves in this country were brought to light. we worked hard. When I chaired that association, we decided to establish round tables, and all women members of parliament were assigned to different round tables to make sure that we try to work on the pieces of legislation that were gender responsive, and make sure that they are passed into law. I can remember the domestic violence bill. We made sure we worked on that. We worked on many areas, the amendment of the penal code. We worked on many areas in reproductive health and reproductive health rights, trying to look at how we can raise money to put in place to help the mothers and girls. We also had another roundtable that I was involved in, especially the prevention of trafficking in person. And I'm glad to say that at least I was able to move that private members bill, and now it's a law, the prevention of trafficking in persons. And we did it because we wanted to protect the women and girls, because they are the ones that are usually trafficked.
Sure.
We also worked on the law of female genital mutilation. We put to an extent of putting in place a law, and several other laws. We concentrate on that, and I'm glad that most of those things have been very useful to so many women around there. But I also shouldn't forget that even when I was in the Constituent Assembly, I was in a group that made sure that the affirmative action was entrenched in the Constitution. So we also had worked around that clock, but then when I became Member of Parliament, I thought it fit to make sure that the affirmative action is realized as an important thing, so that women who were in Parliament were able to defend, especially the women position, so that we give body to the affirmative action that we had established in the Constituent Assembly. So those are some of the things that I did, but I'm glad that I got that opportunity. And especially my background, maybe when I was at university, I did Geography 311, and I had a lot of studies in climatology. So during my time in Parliament, apart from chairing the Uganda Women Parliamentary Association, I was able to chair the Natural Resources Committee and specialized in the area of climate change. So I also had to bring the gender perspective in the climate change arena in this country. And eventually I had to get out. In fact, as I speak now, the Gender and Climate Change focal point to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. But I went in that area because I was advocating for gender in climate change, gender considerations in climate change. So I'm the negotiator in the UNFCCC, but still from the angle of gender. So it has been an area of interest to me, and something I do with a passion.
I mean, I can hear the passion in your voice as you
Yes.
as you're speaking. Now, currently in your role as heading the Uganda Women's Entrepreneurship Program, how are you helping mothers?
Recently, just a few months ago, I was asked to become the national program coordinator for the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, as you said, UWEP. And I think I was encouraged to do that because of my passion in women economic empowerment and women's equal rights and all those that have been pursuing. So in that program, it is about it focuses on women, from 18 to 79 years of age, and all those women. The intention is to help them access some credit that can help them to establish some entrepreneurship.
Is this micro and macro, or just?
It is micro because it's small money. It's up to like 12.5 million. That's the maximum. That's the ceiling. And then you have to be in a group of from 5 to 15. So it encourages women to work in a group, because the group dynamics are the collateral. We don't ask for anything, but we use the group to be able to make sure that women pay back the money. So we give that microcredit to those, especially the disadvantaged women, the single mothers, the people who have been affected and infected by HIV/AIDS, and those who are in disadvantaged rural areas. So we give them that microcredit, help them do some enterprise, and we've seen it work. Then we also train them to be able to manage entrepreneurship programs. So we train them in the different areas of their interest. If they want, for instance, to do brick making, we train them on how to make sure that it's a commercial area, because this money is paid back. It's a revolving fund. So that credit, we train them to make sure that they use it profitably and are able to pay back, and also manage to get some benefit out of the profits they make. We also, that program aims at also trying to link women to markets, so that some of the products they produce, they can sell them. So we give them information, we expose them, we carry out exchange visits, so that women can see what available markets there are here or even abroad. We've seen women export baskets to the United Nations, to UK, and we also try to help them access some appropriate technologies, simple appropriate technologies. But of course, that is, we want to expand. It's true we have a few groups that we are looking at now or we have worked with, but we look forward to expanding the team to be big. We hope our wish is that every woman who is able in a rural area to do some enterprise should have access to this facility.
So, for example, I have a friend who's helping single mothers to knit in a rural area somewhere in the West, but they're struggling with the financing of the project. They have a foreign individual donor who is soon leaving. Would UWEP be able to help such an organization?
Yes, any organization of women that has some enterprise can be helped. It's a simple process, because you go to the sub-county, you get the community development officer at the sub-county, he has the forms, or she has the forms, whoever it is. Then what is important is to fill the forms and make sure you follow the guidelines that have been set at the sub-county level. Then after that, the selection, they're taken the district level. There's a technical team that reviews those things and carries out a selection. So any group that is struggling, especially that which has started and now needs to scale up, is very welcome. So, and it is open. We accept as much as possible, and we hope the government will even give us more money to reach out to others. But the beauty of it is that because it's a revolving fund, those that because it started in 2015-2016 financial year, so those that have paid back, the money remains in that district. So we are lucky that even this money that's paid back can now go to those groups that did not receive or have made applications or are interested. So I would really encourage such groups of women to take advantage of this enterprise development, and we hope that when we enlarge and become big, we can maybe become macro rather.
Did you say it was interest-free or?
Yes, it is interest-free, because this the repayment period is 3 years, but in the first 1 year, there's no interest that you pay. Now, if you are not able to pay in the first 1 year, you can pay the second, third. The repayment period should be 3 years. However, if you go into the second year, then there's a 5% interest that is charged, because of to guard against the fluctuation of money and other incidences that can happen. So in the second year, you pay 5%. Even when you go to the third year, you pay that 5%. But if you're able to use that money and pay it in 1 year, so be it. You can do that and apply again and get it in the second year, or apply again, depending on how active and how resourceful you are, and especially in following the guidelines.
Okay, that's very good information for our mothers out there. So you have no excuse to start a business or to start an organization. Now back to you as Honorable Winnie. You've been a working mother for quite some years.
Yes.
And I know actually even right now, including during your years in Parliament and the Constituent Assembly, you are very, very busy. How did you find the balance between family and work?
Yes, I've been busy most of my life. Yes, I've been busy, but I think maybe the balance is that you might have to put in more time than other people, whereas others might enjoy sleeping for 10 hours or 8 hours. You might be forced to sleep for like 6 hours, maybe, and then have more hours to put to use to doing different activities. So that's one thing. But also you learn to balance things and make sure that you do things at the right time and get help. One important issue that we lucky with, especially us in Uganda, is that we still can get some house help,
Yes.
which is not very common in other places. So that one is a very, very important thing, because if you don't have these machines, if you don't have the dishwashers, if you don't have all those equipment, washing machines, what you can do is at least these house helps would help. So to a great extent, there was a lot of support from that. And at the same time, I had a lot of support from my husband, who would come in, especially when the children part. Because I must admit, sometimes we are too busy. I hardly visited my children at school during the visitation period. So they were with the father most of the time, going there, and sometimes to pick them from school when I'm away. So there was a lot of support from my husband. So when you are a working mother, if you have a husband, you have children, it becomes easy when your spouse supports you. But still, it's hard work. It can never be easy. You do a lot of work. You become a multitask person, which is usually complicated. But it's present. You can manage it. I managed it. I bet others can also manage it.
It's not really for the faint of heart, You really have to have a
determination.
Definitely. And I can see it in you, and I can feel actually your energy. Those who are watching, maybe you can see her positivity and her enthusiasm as we talk about this. Now, maybe you can shed a bit of light on how you stay positive, because I know it was hard. I'll give an example from what I've heard from my own mother, who was in Parliament at the same time as you, during the passing of the female genital mutilation abolition act that you passed. Apparently, after doing so, that year, there were so many cases of genital mutilation of women after the law had passed. How did that make you feel, and how did you deal with that situation?
It's quite frustrating, as you say. Sometimes you work so hard and you think you are putting in place something that women will like and maybe follow, and others will also follow. You put in place a law and you think it will be implemented, and sometimes it's not implemented to your expectation. So it can be very frustrating. But what is important in life is to stay positive. You've done your part. For me, I used to have a lot of pleasure knowing that I've done my part. I have done the legislation. It is there in place. It might not be enforced in a particular year, but I'm sure at one time it would be enforced. So that has been my strength. Let me do my part, do it very well, and make sure it's there. If the enforcement is not as I wanted it, I need to be positive and move on. Because the important part in life is to be positive about things. Do what you can, do it to the best of your ability, and if it doesn't, if you don't accomplish it all, then move on. And I think that's the attitude I would really want to encourage everybody to have, every mother. Otherwise, there are so many challenges in motherhood.
Yes.
There's so many challenges in the family, with the children, as you raise them up. You don't know if they will come out to be responsible children. You just have to trust God and pray about it and say, God, I've done my best. Let you do the rest of what I can't do. So the important thing is to remain positive and hope that what you've put in place will be useful one day.
And how did you get men involved in the conversation?
There was a deliberate effort. There was a deliberate effort in Parliament during that time of male involvement, because you realize that when you talk about women empowerment or you look at gender issues, if you don't get the men involved, sometimes most of those things won't work. I remember in OPA, we were able to allow men to become members, male members of parliament, become members of the association. In fact, if you realize that even this FGM law, it was passed. It was a private members bill by Dr. Chris Bariomonsi, who was a male member of parliament. That's how we used to work. There was a deliberate effort to have male involvement in whatever activity we wanted to, and wherever we involved them heavily, we managed. Where we didn't, I must say that we failed.
Yeah, no, I strongly believe that fatherhood is a part of motherhood. You know,
Certainly.
Although we are talking about everything motherhood, we can't forget about the men.
Yes.
And the role that they play in this situation. Now, you said you have a couple of grandchildren.
Yes.
How does that feel?
Oh, it's such a joy. It's such a joy. And many times when I am telling people, I say, I don't think I ever loved my children as much as I love my grandchildren. I can't remember. But they are such a joy, and it's nice to have them around. And what is interesting is that when you are raising, what I can remember with my children, I would want things arranged. I didn't want them to spoil my chairs or climb on them with the dirty feet, or I was just like that. But these ones, the grandchildren, I feel it as a joy even when they are climbing chairs and they are pouring things everywhere.
Spoiling them.
You don't feel that, you don't feel that kind of saying, now what are they doing? So it's such a joy. They are quite different from having your own children, but they come at a time when you need them. And you sometimes you have free time and you're lonely, and then they are there to help you. Especially during the COVID lockdown, I think that was the best time when I said, it's great to have grandchildren around. Yes.
So you truly enjoy your time with your grandchildren. By the time they go back to their parents, they are spoiled.
But it's such a joy to have them.
Yeah, I asked my mom this question, and I'm going to ask it to you as well. Where was that bridge where you decided, I'm going to stop harassing my children, not to give me children while they're still in school and all of this, and then now to start telling them you better bring home some grandchildren soon? How does that switch happen?
Interestingly, it happens, but I don't know whether I can go back and recall, because when they are young, you are always protective. You don't want the girls to become pregnant before marriage. You want them to be serious with the education and try to establish a career. So it is true. You just don't want them to be messing up with boys. But of course, when they grow and they are through with the education and they're working, then you say, what next? And then somehow I think it is natural. You start getting a feeling, well, maybe my son should really get married. But it comes naturally. And when they get children, it's a joy. You don't remember harassing them, but you say, well, it's good. At least you've brought a grandchild around here. Yes.
That is so amazing. I wonder how my time will be, because I don't see how the switch
it will
actually actually happens.
Yes.
Now, it's been such a pleasure hosting you here. Do you have any final thoughts, any final words you'd like to leave with our mothers and our listeners and those watching us on YouTube?
Well, maybe what I can talk about is to encourage mothers out there. They need to take up the challenge of being a mother. It can never be easy, but you have to make sure it works. Because you have to know that there's a lot of work. You have to raise up children and raise up good children. We give them time so that they come out to be good citizens wherever they are. So I would like to encourage mothers, please work hard. Make sure you make things work, however difficult it might be. You might need to put in more time. You might need to sometimes sacrifice some of the things you used to like. But there's time when you go back to them. When the children have grown and they're out, then you can enjoy whatever you missed in the early days. So my encouragement is that let everything be motherhood.
Yes. I couldn't say it any better than that. With that, all I can say is to all the mothers out there, you're a great mother. Thank you.